Someone literally asked me, how can I make her squirt without freaking her out? And honestly, that's a pretty valid question, because if you do it wrong, it might be weird and it might feel like a ton of pressure on your partner. But if you do it right, well, then she will never forget you. What's up, guys? My name is Miranda, sex coach and sex educator, and today we are gonna be diving into all of those spicy sex questions that you want to ask oh so bad, but no one is answering. And better yet, I'll be answering all of your questions that I took from my Instagram poll. We're talking dirty talk, squirting, clitoral techniques, kinks, and toys, and what to do when sex starts to feel like a chore. Now, for those of you who don't know me, I'm gonna be giving it to you blunt and raw, just the way I like it. Okay, that sounds strange, but it's true. I don't want any bull. I don't like when people dick around the point. Like, tell me what I need to do to get to B. Now, if any of this hits for you, make sure you grab my ebook to Unlocking Her G-Zone, or if you are a woman or gifting something to your partner to help them better understand their body, Awaken the Waters might be the course for them. You guys, trust me, I teach this stuff for a reason, and it's because I had to learn everything pretty much all by myself. And I'm still learning today. Now, without further ado, let's dive into the first section where we are covering kinks, initiation, and dirty talk. So the first question that we have here is, how do I start dirty talking to my wife? Ooh, I absolutely love me some dirty talk. However, I was not always good at it. I used to be a silent lover, believe it or not. One thing that I think is really important is that dirty talk doesn't have to be vulgar. Sometimes it's more about turning words into sensations, meaning how those words are gonna impact your partner when they land in their body. What type of responses are we looking for? Sometimes it's easy as just describing what you are doing to them. You also wanna drop the tone of your voice and almost let it vibrate. It's almost like a deep whisper that you can feel the vibrations leaving your throat. You feel how deep I am? Right fucking there. Yeah, that's the spot. That's one way to go. Another way you can go is by affirmation. I love the way you look when you're on top of me. Play with your tone and don't forget the dramatic pauses. The best way to practice isn't in the bedroom, it's actually outside of the bedroom or during your own self-pleasure sessions. That way you can get kind of an idea of what you want to say, what you love about your partner, the things that you guys do in your sexual routine, so you kind of have an idea of how it might come out. The more that you work on it, the better you will get, and just have fun with it. Now, the next question that I have here is, how can I introduce my kinks without freaking her out? So the key here is curiosity, not pressure. And the best way to do this is having the conversation outside of the bedroom. So you take out that you need to make a decision now and you take off that pressure. That way it can be more of like an open conversation. Sometimes it's just breaking the ice and being like, would it turn you on if I told you one of my fantasies? Or you can try the approach of, babe, what turns you on? You can put the ball in their court so that you can explore a little bit more. But you want to create some space for yes, no's, maybes, and just get to know each other's fantasies. Just because somebody likes something or wants to do something doesn't mean it has to happen right now. I love the analogy of planting seeds and letting them slowly blossom. Honestly, if you're proposing something to a woman, do it while they're ovulating. This is one of the main reasons why I think like tracking your partner's cycle is actually super, super helpful, so you can get to understand what she might be experiencing in her body in that moment. But sometimes it's not a hard no. Sometimes it's like, maybe we can work something out where we're just dabbling in a little bit, but make sure you figure out like your safe words, your yeses, your nos, your maybes. All of that conversation actually happens specifically outside of the bedroom, and keep it light. And there's gonna be some things that your partner doesn't wanna do, and that's okay too. What you need to do is decide how necessary it is for you to have those needs fulfilled. Okay, so this next one's about initiation, and honestly, I feel like everybody at some point in their life will experience this exact thing. Sometimes initiation feels like it's one-sided. Am I the problem? So because I don't know the full context, I'm not gonna say you are or you are not the problem. But I do wanna break it down into two different types of desire that I think it's really important for everybody to know and understand. So the first one we're gonna talk about is spontaneous desire. So spontaneous desire is what we have been conditioned to think that sex is supposed to be like. It's supposed to be on demand and you are supposed to drop into this role and then all of a sudden you're grocery shopping and you're just horny. It's very common for men to have this type of spontaneous desire. You know, that type that porn and mainstream media usually highlight. But most women actually experience responsive desire. Not to say that you can't be both desire types, but usually you lean more to one way than you do the other. For instance, a lot of women will be more spontaneous during ovulation and they don't actually need a turn on. But for the most part, it's responsive. And what that means is that arousal doesn't always come before the actual moment. It can come during and it can even come after the initiation has already started. There's a lot of times where my partner will initiate and I'm like, maybe. So then I go in with no expectations and see if I can get into the mood, because a lot of the time it's about getting into the mood for us women. The example that I like to use here is, imagine that you are not hungry, but then all of a sudden somebody brings out like a warm plate of food and that smells absolutely to die for. Suddenly you're salivating and you're fucking hungry. Now she might not actually start the night feeling turned on, but let's say you help her put the dishes away, the kids are asleep, you draw her a bath or give her a massage, maybe you light some candles, start playing with some erogenous zones, get some cuddles going, let her land in her body. But you cannot have any expectations. And that is kind of what creates what Dr. Vanessa says as the bristle effect, where we literally are like, oh my God, he's only doing this because he wants to use my holes. And that is like an absolute no-go in relationships. And that's how you end up in a dead bedroom. So we don't want to have expectations of our partner. We want it to be open. I mean, like, after all, like, masturbation is a beautiful thing. If you are at this point in your relationship, there is probably some underlying issues happening that are resulting in this. Maybe some of them you already are aware of. They've either been expressed, or maybe there needs to be a conversation that actually has to be had. But essentially, you can always use self-pleasure in the meantime to take care of your needs while attending or gardening your garden, watering your plants, putting your seeds in the ground, waiting for them to blossom. Because when we are taking care of a relationship, it is a lot like taking care of a garden. Things just don't sprout overnight. But arousal isn't always instant. It's built, it's layered. Like starting a fire from embers, not a match. And this is really where a lot of men will fumble. They mistake the lack of initiation as a lack of desire, when that's simply not always the case. Because in a lot of cases, she just really hasn't been given the context to even be turned on yet. She's not broken, and sometimes she might not actually be disinterested. She's just wired differently. So if you feel like you're always initiating, I want you to ask yourself this question. Am I creating a space that her desire feels like it can awaken? Okay, the next question that I have here is, how do I suggest something new? Use the sandwich method. Appreciation, curiosity, more appreciation. An example of this might be like, I love the way that we have been connecting lately. I've been thinking about trying blah. Is that something that would turn you on? Okay, so now we're rolling into the next section, which is orgasms, squirting, and techniques. How do I make my girl squirt? Okay, first things first, this is like one of my pet peeves. You can't make anybody do anything. You can invite, you can ask to explore, you can approach with curiosity, but you cannot make anybody do anything. But what you can do is you can create the conditions to allow somebody to go there. And that's exactly what I teach in my ebook, Unlocking the G-Spot. I teach the nervous system safety, the surrender, the techniques, the positions. Everything you could want about this whole topic is in that ebook. But right out of the gates, my guy, you got the wrong idea in your mind already. You are definitely most likely somebody who is putting a lot of pressure on their partner, and pressure and pleasure do not go well together. Okay, what is the difference between coming and an orgasm? I'm gonna assume with this question you're asking like penis versus vulva, maybe? So we're gonna separate it like this. Coming is the release of. An orgasm is the full body experience. So even if we were to flip this where coming is for everybody and orgasm is for everybody, I would still feel confident in saying coming is more of a release, because you can come without orgasming. And if you're a man, I feel like you've experienced this before. And for women, same here. A lot of the times, if somebody squirts, they're not actually having an orgasm, which is a common myth that a lot of people like to say both happen together. Always our squirt equals orgasm, when that's simply just not the case. They can happen together, but not always. Okay, so this next one is actually a really common question, and it is, how do I play with her clit without hurting her? Okay, so first things first, absolutely no dry fingers. The vulva, the exterior of the vulva is actually not self-lubricating, and no, your spit is not good enough. Spit dries fast, it dries tacky, and it also leaves room for micro tears, micro abrasions happening, which just can cause a whole other realm of infections that we just don't want to mess around with. We are trying to create pleasure. We're not trying to rub sandpaper, okay? So lube. I personally, if I'm doing like fingering or honestly pretty much for everything unless I'm using a silicone toy, I love a good silicone lube. I also love a good oil-based lube because there is a lot of glide and it's super long lasting. With a water-based, it's still good, especially if you're gonna be using it with toys. But if you are gonna be using a water-based lube with toys or with fingering, actually, in particular, I do suggest getting a backdoor play one because it's just thicker and it's designed to last longer and not absorb super fast into the skin. Little hack here, if you use water-based lube, just keep a glass of water by the bed, dip your hand in it, and then rub it, and it will reactivate the water-based lube. Now, I will stand by this because the best way to get to know your partner is to watch how they please themselves, because we know what we like, or hopefully we know what we like. And if not, this is your invitation to explore that. But watch her and how she touches herself. Maybe she doesn't know. And if that's the case, that's also fine, because that gives you guys a bonding experience where the goal doesn't have to be climax, but to find what pleasure actually feels like on her clit. Meaning maybe it's really gentle, like 5 grams of pressure, or maybe it's a little bit more aggressive. Some people need more stimulation. And it also does fluctuate with their menstrual cycle. So where they are in their cycle is going to cause somebody to be more sensitive or needing more sensation. So the best thing that you can do is just openly communicate to your partner and just have like a pleasure mapping night, like an explorative date night. And she can do the same on you. But for somebody with a super sensitive clit, I always say do not start on top. Make sure you are doing your full body warm up, get her aroused, make out, take your time, and start above the clitoris or on either sides in between the inner and outer labia. I say go from there and do indirect stimulation first and play around with that. Now, this next question is, how do I consistently squirt? Okay. So some people can squirt constantly, and then some people can't. It also depends on like how hydrated you are. Also, how much pressure you are putting on yourself. Am I rushing? Do I feel safe? Am I relaxed? What most people don't know is squirting actually requires you to let go and relax. You cannot force it. You just have to follow the wave. And I mean, like, not to just plug myself in again, but it is true. Why I created this course called Awaken the Waters was to go with the men's ebook and the couples ebook, Unlocking the G-Spot, Awaken the Waters is about surrendering, letting your squirting flow happen. I cover like the techniques, mindful masturbation, meditation practices, things to allow you to fully receive and explore your body in a way that we've never been taught. So it's not just squirting, it's literally gonna enhance all of your pleasure. So if you're a dude watching this and you're like, oh my God, my partner really struggles with this, buy them that course. That will help them out and that will help you in your relationship too. Okay, now moving on to the third section, we're gonna be talking about psychological blocks and performance. So the first question here is, why can I only orgasm with toys? Now this is coming from a female, and I want you to know there's absolutely no shame in that. Honestly, toys are a great tool. They give you consistent stimulation, and a lot of women actually do need that. That doesn't mean that you aren't going to come with your partner, because there are ways that you can use toys to assist during partner play that allow you to get the full pleasure experience. And if your partner is not understanding of that, then that needs to be a bigger conversation, because they are denying you your pleasure. And it works. If it works for you, it works for you. But for me personally, I usually like to take toy breaks where I just start to explore my body with my hands, and I just do that for usually about a month. And that way I'm starting to rebuild different sensations. It makes it a lot easier for my partner to get me off. And you know what? I'm totally fine with taking those breaks. Some people aren't, but this is just an option or an avenue to go down and explore, because sometimes we can become desensitized. So it's about adding new sensations into the mix, or maybe not using a vibrator, maybe using a glass or a crystal dildo. It depends on what you're exactly wanting to work on, or what type of climax you are trying to achieve, whether it be internal or external. But sometimes it's just about rediscovering new pleasure pathways. What I do want to say is that training your pleasure pathways does take time. It takes time for you to relax into new sensations, deepen your breath, and deepen your understanding of your own body, and try not to approach it with the goal of orgasm. Try to approach it with the goal of feeling sensation and really exploring different touches, different pressures, feeling what side likes what, maybe one side's more sensitive than the other. Really dive in. It's almost like a little bit of a science experiment, but touch yourself a little bit more for a whole month, and do it with your partner and maybe do it without your partner. But just eliminate the toys for a bit. Take a little bit of a breather and reset. And if you need some help, I do this stuff in my one-on-one coaching. Now, this one is very common in long-term relationships. Sex feels like a chore. Am I broken? So we're running into what I did notice on my poll here is that a lot of women do feel broken when they're not experiencing sex in the way that mainstream media tells us we should. And that is a really common thing, or a common theme that we see with women and sex, when all of these things that we are experiencing are actually really normal, and we need to educate and talk about them a lot more so that people aren't isolating themselves and feeling like they are broken. Because the more broken we feel, the more we isolate and draw away from our partner and other forms of connection that we could be building. And that's just a really not a great space to be in. And I've personally been in that space myself. But I promise you, you can get out. So a lot of the times when we see this, usually you're lacking connection in other areas of your relationship. Or if that's not the case and you are in a really healthy relationship and your communication is really strong, my next question would be like, what is the stress like in your life currently right now? Are you currently overwhelmed? Is your nervous system burnt out? Are you fried? Because when we are stressed, it can be really hard to even think about doing anything other than the non-negotiables of our day. This also can come up when we are dealing with more complex emotions. Maybe we had a trauma trigger, or maybe it's time to work on something that we have been ignoring. Because sometimes it's about deepening our relationship with ourselves first and working through maybe something that potentially needs some extra love and healing. So the next question that I have here is, I haven't orgasmed since kids. Honestly, I feel like we need to talk about this so much more because your whole nervous system just went through a crazy upgrade. And also on top of that, I want to say like your body has also changed. Just like we are evolving all the time, our pleasure also is evolving as well. So it's totally normal and totally fine that you're experiencing this, but let me help you work through this. A lot of the times when we see this come up, we need to work on that rewiring of the pleasure pathways. Kind of like what I talked about a few questions ago. So we need to start adding tools that connect the body, the brain, and the breath. All three of these are very, very important to help you rewire those pleasure pathways or those neural pathways. And they will also help you explore different sensations and what you like. But there again, it sounds like you are putting a lot of pressure on yourself in this area. And I just want you to know that this is totally normal after the big shifts that your body has gone through, whether it's been a year postpartum or 5 years postpartum. A lot of people don't seek help in this area until they are way later in life and have already been struggling in this area for a long time. So I want to say thank you, and thank you for being so vulnerable and asking about this, because I think this will help a lot of other women know that they are not alone in this and that this is actually really common. Okay, now finally, this last section here is oral fetishes and curiosities. So the question that I got here is, how can I have a better head with a narrow bite? Girl, you are talking to the headmaster here. I honestly should teach a BJ course. However, I fear that a lot of men will sign up for it. But you know what? If you have any ideas, drop it down below. Honestly, I would like to hear how I could execute this without getting a bunch of dudes that are just trying to see me do the do, you know? But I could teach it without doing the do. I could figure it out, you know? But I want you to think about using your lips more than using your tongue. And I have a question here. Does he not like hands, or is he not liking the way you are using your hands? Because we use hands all the time in blowjobs, and they are almost like an extension of our mouth. So if you do it right with the right amount of pressure, and you're turning the right way, and you're doing those hand tricks and tongue tricks, that should be no problem at all. But I mean, at the end of the day, you like what you like. So maybe your partner really doesn't like hands, but also to work with you and where you're at too and what you're capable of doing. So like I said, I want you to think more tongue, more lips, less jaw, lighten your suction. Think of like swirling motions. Try to use your tongue around the tip, maybe lick from like shaft to base. You can still suck on those balls. And then really just rest your jaw when you feel like it's needed. I think that is super, super, super important. And if you feel like your jaw is just relatively tight, you can do jaw massage on the external part of your face, or you can actually do an internal TMJ treatment, which you can get a massage therapist or a physiotherapist to do and kind of work with that there. But I would really tune in to using what you can and not worrying about taking the whole thing in, because there's a lot of pleasure that can actually happen just within that first inch or so being in your mouth. Now, this next question here is, how common are foot fetishes? Okay. They are seriously common. And I think they are one of those fetishes that have been like green lighted in the kink community, as well as in like the vanilla world, where we're like, we've just accepted like foot fetish is a thing. It's one of the most talked about ones. Yes, like suck my toes, let me give a foot job, like that type of stuff, such a vibe. I think that is much more normalized now. But if this is something that you are wanting to do or wanting to experience, just communicate with your partners and say that this is something that I would like to try, or this is something that I need. Like there's a difference between a kink or a fetish. A fetish is something that needs to be there, where a kink is something that like you can like dabble in and then pull out. It's not necessary for the whole experience to revolve around that. If you are dating and this is kind of like a non-negotiable, make sure you say this in like the first couple of dates so that somebody knows what your expectations are in the bedroom. Okay, so I don't know, maybe this was like more of like a podcast style video. If you liked it, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Drop your comments down below. If you have any questions, let me know. Maybe I will do a YouTube version as well. If not, head over to my Instagram, follow me there, shoot me your messages. I want to know your questions. Because the truth is, I think all of us have questions. We were just never really taught how to talk about sex. And don't forget, if you want my manual on how to unlock the G-spot, that link's down below, as well as Awaken the Waters. And I have a bunch of freebies in there too. Feel free to grab what you want and yeah, explore a little bit more. Your pleasure is worth it. Her pleasure is worth it. Honestly, it would be so much better if we all just communicated nice and openly about our sexual needs, our preferences, our wants, our needs, and our desires. All right, my loves, I hope that was helpful. I will see you next week for another video. Cheers.